Welcome to the XY Advisor Podcast, a global community of financial advisors sharing and learning with one another to drive the positive evolution of financial advice. To get involved, go to xyadvisor.com or simply download the XY Advisor app. Hub24 is on a mission to empower advisors to deliver better financial futures for their clients. They are dedicated to customer service excellence and delivering innovative product solutions that create value for advisors and their clients. These are just some of the reasons why advisors rate them number one for overall satisfaction and why their managed portfolio solution has been rated best in market 5 years running. Hub24 believes nothing happens in isolation. So they're working together with advisors, licensees, and industry leaders to leverage their data and technology expertise to help solve key challenges in the delivery of financial advice, so more Australians can access cost-effective advice. Welcome back to the XY Advisor Podcast. I'm Fraser Jack, and today I'm talking to Rob Skinner. Welcome, Rob.
Good morning, Fraser. How are you?
Very, very well. Now, we've known each other for a number of years now, but before we get into the history and the back end of it, let's talk about, just give us a quick overview of you and what you're doing at the moment.
Okay, cool. Well, currently I am the head of practice engagement at Fortnum Private Wealth, which I've been there for about 2 years, is my current role. So we've got about 90 odd practices, 230 advisors, I guess a mid or large licensee group. Before that, I was thinking, knowing this was coming up, I went back in history and kind of looked at where I've been in the industry. It's a little bit scary, but anyway, I think it's 26 years ago I started as a paraplanner. So that was where I kind of kicked off. So the road to where
was that back in the day when paraplanning was a brand new profession, right?
Oh, I got my business card and it had financial paraplanner on it, and I had to educate everybody what that did, and I likened it to paralegal, that I'm the person that sits next to the planner. So yeah, all my mates, even people in the industry, I think back then, were getting I guess used to the concept of what a paraplanner actually is. So and I was fortunate then. I did 3 different paraplanning roles, and I was lucky enough to be part of some good firms. So I learnt some really good stuff very early on in my career, kind of paraplanning, which was good. And then I got stolen by a guy by actually Paul Barrett out to an organisation called Connolly Temple. I don't know, probably the people listening to this who have got a bit of experience in the industry would recognise that name. They got bought by Royal and Sun Alliance. So I went to the kind of BDM land and then into a national sales role quite a while ago. But that was good, taking what I learned from inside a practice to then getting out and seeing other practices.
This feels like, to me, it's a pendulum swinging, right? You're into the paraplanning, into the what I call the nerd side of it all. Like you're getting into the numbers. Then then the pendulum swings the other way, and all of a sudden you're marketing and sales.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think that's probably more where I naturally sat, Fraser. So but I like the intellect side of it. So I need to have the knowledge to then be able to sell. So, I was with a national sales for a company called Hartley Point or Hartley's, taking kind of a broking business traditionally into doing financial planning, which I don't think has ever worked in Australia. But anyway, we gave it a crack. But I saw some of the clients that were getting advice in there, and some of the outcomes weren't terrific, and so I then looked at, well, maybe I can do this myself. So after that national role, I'm based in Newcastle, and I thought I'll have a crack and be a planner. And so started with no clients, no centres of influence. Because I had a national role, I wasn't even really embedded in my town. So I literally opened the door, got a brand, and waited for the phone to ring. Someone said to me, you're not going to get paid for 6 months. And I said, rubbish. I know how this works. I've done my spreadsheet. I know what's going to happen. But I think that was spot on.
Yeah, it's the I related back to the first year apprentice number. You start out the door, open the door, first year apprentice, you've got no clients, and you get paid about the same wage as a first year apprentice, and then eventually it tends to double each year after that. I think until you're actually getting some money.
No,
But,
absolutely.
I think that was about the same time I started, so I think we were sort of on the same wavelength. The computers were a new thing.
Yep.
You had to type everything up on a work doc. There was no spell check. And it was hit the phones, get on the phones and call people.
Yeah, absolutely. And you have a few of those moments, or those people that come into your life or come back into your life that then can be quite instrumental in helping your business. So again, I was very lucky with some of the clients I had. I think I literally ran into a mate's dad at the post office. He said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Well, I'm a planner now." And he said, "I think I need one of those." And then the rest is history. And he became my biggest referral source. Got me into the Newcastle club, got me, just introduced me around. We'd catch up every quarter and strategize about how he could introduce me to certain people, that he knows. So you remember those things. They're kind of pivotal times. So through that, building the business, just me kind of day one. And then I started lecturing financial planning at the grad school in Newcastle, which was fascinating. I had to build the whole curriculum and build the test. So year one was intense. You get paid $7,000. It's not, you don't do it for the money. So, but what was really good about that was seeing kind of middle management and all that kind of stuff really want to learn about money. We're going through testamentary trusts and franking credits and mortgage offset accounts, and the questions that came in, they basically after 13 weeks had to put together a mini financial plan, and they were engaged. So I did that for a couple of years, and that kind of led to a company called Innergi with a mate of mine, a guy by the name of Matt Linnett, who very much worked in the kind of behavioural space, and we kind of came together to say, let's build something that can educate Australia. That was let's give Australians a safe place to learn more about money. That's what we started with. And back then, there was no Money Smart. There was Fido. Fido was fairly ordinary as far as content goes. And we thought, if people could get the behavioural side of money and the technical side of money and get their handle on both of those, that's a pretty powerful proposition. So we thought, people would turn up and pay for that in truckloads, but that didn't quite happen that way. And we joked before hopping on here, Innergi was probably a fintech before fintechs were around. That was 2006. So that was like, 15 years ago. And what we started with and what we ended up with, we were working with a website developer. So putting websites together, and we would just come back going, can you build a module for us? So they go and explore that and go, we think we can do it like this. And, we lost a bit of money. We built our modules in Flash. And for those that you remember pre-Apple, Flash was a good thing. When Apple came along, Flash wasn't a good thing. So we threw those out and kind of started again. And that business model changed as well. So having a new product, how do you price something like that? And we needed, I don't really like the word, but we needed distribution. So we needed to work out who's going to pay for this and how would it work. So we had kind of 4 different areas, but we ended up concentrating back on financial planning practices. And we had a couple of industry super funds as clients as well. So that was whilst I was still running my planning business. We were riding on weekends, kind of, in fits and starts. And then it got to a stage where the Knowledge Centre, which was kind of the product of Innergi, started getting a little bit of interest. And there was going to eventually be a conflict of interest because whilst I was running my planning practice, I don't know how many planners would have been comfortable to upload their client lists on a product that I'm also kind of running. So the other thing, both of those businesses were quite busy. So the chances of running two was going to be fairly slim. So I decided to sell the business, much to the surprise of my state manager. Back then I was licensed through Securitor, because funnily enough, the business was in its prime. Like it was flying. It was growing quickly. I don't know whether I mentioned to you, it was a flat fee business. When I started my planning business, I started with what I knew, and I did 1% of funds under management, and that's how I rock and rolled. And then probably 18 months into that, I found that model didn't work for me. I had someone that was saving $1 million a year, and I had someone that was earning a lot of. Well, that particular client, had 4 mil to invest, and I had another client that was earning good money but had 50 grand to invest. And it didn't seem right that they had such a difference in fee, or if you like, the guy that was earning a lot of money that didn't have a lot, he couldn't afford advice. And he's in the industry today and has admitted publicly to being a client of mine. But he said to me, Rob, you need to find a way that I can become a client, because I need you, and your current fee structure to pay you $500 a year is not going to work. So we took a couple of days out of the business with a mentor of mine and ripped the business apart. And, we weren't the first with flat fees, but we were certainly early, and then got rid of all commissions. And I know I had a bit of a fight with my dealer group getting out of, what was then volume bonuses or under a different name. So that was a little bit difficult, but it was good. And we had clients referring clients based on fees. I remember sitting down with one client, and I said, we'll go through, now we'll go through fees after everything else, so you can add value. Now we'll go through fees. He goes, I know what your fees are. I'm like, how do you know that? He goes, oh, Mark told me. I said, oh, what did he say? He goes, go to Rob. He'll look after all your financial shit for $4 grand a year. Okay, fair enough. So that was a bit of that
from a marketing point of view, from a marketing message point of view. Nice and simple. So, and easy for one client to tell another potential client.
Yeah, and I think for different people, certainly that, it would be a different fee point now. That was 15 years ago.
2003, 2004, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's nearly 20 years ago. Yeah, wow. Yeah. When you say it like that, Fraser, it makes me feel old.
Sorry to make you feel old.
But yeah, and it was different. And half of my clients would have been out of the industry, so within the industry, and they liked that fee model too. And I remember doing, after work, like for them, doing a session in Sydney to, a whole lot of PDMs, BDMs and all that kind of stuff. And they just liked the cleanliness of the body. Of that model. That's kind of fairly much probably mainstream these days. But, and I sold my practice in March 2009, which was the low in the market. And I know a lot of people said, "Wow, that's a terrible time to sell," but it was a flat fee, so it didn't really matter. But I made sure I made the new advisor look good, because my clients had 2 years of bad performance, and then I sold the low, so I did them a big favour. But that was actually a horrible experience, Fraser. Like I had to.
You took responsibility for the GFC, did you? From your client's point of view?
That was me. I picked the low. I thought if I get out, it's a good turnaround for everybody. But it wasn't very nice, because I had about 70 clients, and I had to resign 70 times, and I actually found that quite difficult, because a lot of the proposition to those people is, I'm young, I'm going to be here forever, choose me as your planner, and then that didn't work out. But anyway, that's so I struggled with having that person or that business to consumer.
Take me through that conversation. What did you say to them?
So I went in search of obviously a planner to buy my practice. I ended up having two planners. I had a Sydney base and a Newcastle base. So I found two different planners. So it was an easy conversation, but people are emotional around their money. So the basically the conversation was, I've been building something on the side to educate Australians around money. And that's something that's a passion of mine, and I've come a fork in the road that I can't do too. So I can either build my business, or I can go and educate a wider community of people. So they knew the intent was really good, but then I sat down and said, I've found your planner. Like, I probably interviewed 15 planners. I probably sat down and I needed to make sure that the model was going to work and that the clients were going to be looked after. So that wasn't easy, but ended up finding a good home for both those client bases. So, so the conversation was, most of the clients were fine. Some of them were angry. Some of them, especially the ones that have been on for a year, and they know they're, in inverted commas, being sold. So, that can be a little bit awkward.
Yeah, it's always an interesting way people, because it's very easy to say you can sell a portion of your client base or sell down, but there is those difficult conversations to be had in a lot of cases where you are actually, like you said, breaking up or resigning with people. So, yeah, it's interesting. Just while we talk about that financial planning business, and obviously with Innergi, you've come up with some unusual names for the businesses you've started. Where did they all come from?
So, I mean, Amicus was the financial planning business, and that shows you how far through the Latin dictionary I got. I was still at the A's. So, Amicus stands for and amicus is a friendly legal person. So someone that aids you. So that's where Amicus came from. Innergi is a different one, and in hindsight, that was hard for some people to pronounce. We had Innergi and people that would just stumble on the phone. So where that came from was after 4 bottles of red wine with Matt. So, we looked at what I was saying to you before around the behavioural and the technical. So we looked at synergy and energy and all this kind of stuff. And then I've still got the pieces of paper, mate. We had, 4 of us, our partners as well, writing down, and even when you look at those, the different personalities, and we were probably not going to go down this track today, but we built this whole thing called money personality, which is around the kind of deep values that we don't necessarily even know ourselves. So adapting like a Myers-Briggs to money. So it's even funny looking at those pieces of paper now and the different way that the 4 of us kind of interacted. But and we thought the inner, like we're helping the inner if the inner can be at peace. And then, Matt wrote, I think Skinner and Linnett, his name's Linnett, which sound like very different surnames, but they both got inner in them, Inner. And then we thought we need this G or this energy or the synergy. So that's kind of where it came from. We wanted, we were probably a bit naive, but we wanted it to be the Google of money, that if you want to know something of money, you just energy it. But that's a bit hard to say. But anyway, that didn't eventuate.
I'm always interested to see where names come from, because you're right. You go through these deep brainstorming sessions and you come up with all these different reasons why, and you look into it, and then a client will come along and the end user will be like, "What? I don't know what that means." Just completely miss the point, and you're like, but there's really deep, meaningful information inside of all of that, and they're like, yeah, but I just didn't see it.
Yeah. It's and I mean, it depends how much alcohol is consumed as well. Or I mean, in the beginning, you take it so seriously, but I saw what I wanted to see on LinkedIn, someone having a bit of fun with names,
yes,
getting their oversold. So
and you know what, people just look at stuff and they're just a name after all, and anything can be explained if you go deep into it, if you want to get really deep. But I think sometimes just the simple, easy names are easy to share and easy to pronounce and easy to spell, because that's the other thing too. When people get all creative with the spelling of the names, and then people are trying to type it into a Google search engine and can't find it.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah. So tell us obviously Innergi had an evolution as well.
Yeah. So with so we kept building that. Sold the planning firm, and then again with the Excel spreadsheet, it took longer to get it out there, and we were still finding our market. So I think I worked at that for maybe 2 years, still with no income out. I think we had enough people kind of using it that it was paying its own way, but certainly I wasn't getting any income from that. And funny how life rolls. So I was a member of the Newcastle Club up here, and I just thought, let's just be a bit tight with expenses. So cut a long story short, resigned from there. A good mate of mine who was a client of mine, was a coal mine developer, kind of reached out because he saw I had resigned. He was on one of the committees and said, "What are you doing?" I said, things are tight. And, we're getting to the fork in the road with Innergi around, I personally had a goal that if I go beyond this time, I need to go and find a job. Or if I go beyond this amount of money, I need to go and find a job. So I'd pass both of those. So I was entertaining, what does contract work look like? And, this ex kind of client of mine said, well, can you give me a couple of days a week? And I said, yeah, sure. And it was fascinating. So that ended up, that's not on my LinkedIn profile. I did actually for a time have 2 LinkedIn profiles. That business was fascinating. It ended up taking over my life. It helped Innergi stay alive. Innergi was probably a day a week for me at that stage. I was running a phosphate business out of Tahiti. I was running a geothermal project that had projects in Newcastle and France, and was doing kind of a biomass to energy project in Western New South Wales as well. So it literally ended up having a business for every day of the week. But that was good. And I ended up, Innergi, I didn't get neglected. Matt and I were still dabbling. We had a great staff member in there running that. I was going to be this mining mogul and, met a couple of billionaires. It's just a very different world. But what was interesting, though, is the focus on the commercial model with mining projects, with, energy projects. It's all about the commercial model. So it ended up, I sold my house. I was going to move to Tahiti, book the kids into school. Looking at rentals over there, and then one of my youngest daughter had a medical issue, and the doctor basically said, "Look, you're not going to go and live in Tahiti because medical evac is too far. It's a five hour plane ride to New Zealand." So that all went. I resigned out of there, and I came back into Innergi, and Matt and I were 50-50 then. And I said, "Mate, I'm going to give this a good crack." And back then, I assume, when was that? That would have been about 2013, 2014. Facebook, Twitter, the need for content just started coming. So I came back to Matt, so mate, we need to give this a shove. I'm happy to do it, but we're not going to do it 50-50. So I ended up buying the majority of his stake out, and we were a real beneficiary of that need for content because we were already there. We'd been building for years. And we had that, one thing that set us apart was that kind of integrated content hub. So the articles and the modules and the calculators and the videos, it was just something that a planner could turn up and brand and run with. So we started getting really busy. I think our biggest month, we had 16 practices come on. So it was just a really good scalable business. It was still lean. For me, I looked at what's next. I was always kind of like, right, this is humming now. This is good. What's next? And I thought we could either take this into another industry or we could go to another country. I decided that we go to another country. Look at the UK, and some of our concepts would be able to fly with that, and then some we'd need to obviously rewrite. We're already talking with Explain. I think one of the guys, or one of the product managers, saw me present at one of the first Baz Gardner Advisor Edge conferences. I think that's where I met Michael back as well, and we got kind of talking after that. So we were talking for Iris for a little while around giving them a content feed. And I remember one day then I said to him, "Look, I'm looking at going to the UK. You guys just bought a big business over there. You've got the scope. Would you be interested in chucking $500,000 in and getting me over there? I'll give you a share." And basically come back saying, "Well, the only way you're going to get over there is if we own you." And I laughed, and then some numbers started going up on a whiteboard, and I went, "Oh, that's interesting." And then the rest is history. We were fully acquired by Iris in 2015, which was an experience in itself. So I think, again, I was probably naive then, thinking, a small business going into a big $2 billion financial services tech company. This is going to be brilliant. Imagine what the knowledge center is going to become. But within that, the knowledge center is a small operation, and what Iris has under that company is massive. So we weren't necessarily the priority within that group. So I ended up kind of, in a way, still just running that business under Iris, and then was under a 4-year kind of earn-out contract with them, and then that was then the connected to Fortnum. So after looking or coming to the end with Iris, was kind of looking around at, what I would do next. Had a few different opportunities, but I think for me, Fortnum, I knew Neil, I knew his ability. I think I underestimated when don't tell him this. I hope this is not going to be broadcast anywhere.
Fraser, he listens to this. So yeah, he'll hear it.
I better say something good then. I think I underestimated where he was at. And for those of you that don't know Neil, I mean, he ran wealth over at CBA, then at ANZ, and then has come out to Fortnum. So I think kind of seeing him operating, I underestimated where he was at. I knew the Neil Younger back from kind of Securitor days, and it's an entrepreneurial business, so it suits me. It's not. It's ownership kind of aligns with the practices. Practices own it. There's not one big owner. There's no kind of product involved. So it suited me. If you go right back to, in the flat fee business, it worked well. So it was a bit of a standout for me. So then being able to shape what we do, we didn't want to have the traditional PDM type offer because, a lot of those roles were subsidised from product. Like if you maybe look at the AMPs of the world or the Securitors or the Magnitudes or the FinWizers that, they get the money out of product and it props up the licensee offer. We don't have the luxury of being able to do that at Fortnum. So, we're looking at, how do we do things a little bit differently within there to still get some really good outcomes for the practices?
Yeah. Now, just on that, obviously, and going back a little bit to your mining heyday, and some of the commercial models, I think it's probably very simple to see a business in, say, mining where it's just money in, money out, minerals. There's no humans involved as far as that's concerned. It's pretty much just what's the transaction, what's the cost, what are we going to get out of it? Is it like the simplicity that then you can overlay on any business, because that's pure business, right? Just money in, money out.
I think so. Some people might disagree with me. That's you can put that alongside of the care for clients. I think it can be really quite easy to design the business, and I think my view is I'm surprised that still some people, I guess, practices still looking at planning or fees or what the client value service proposition is. And I kind of think, wow, we were grappling with that 20 years ago, like maybe beyond that. Like I think it was still being grappled, with before that. So I think, and I mean, my mentor in my business, when we looked at changing my business to flat fees, it was very simple. Like we literally looked at, well, where do we want to be? And then let's work backwards from there. So we literally, in a nutshell, looked at what wage do you want to earn, Rob? Okay, 150 grand, right? Oh, cool. What are the expenses of the business for the business that you want to build? So what staff's in there? What's rent? You get that number. And what's our profit margin? What's 35%? Okay, so we've got our revenue now. So that's easy. We've got the revenue that we need. What's your service? So my service was this, and I worked out what's your capacity around that. I could look after 120 clients. I wanted to work, 34 hours a week or something. I could look after 120 clients. So then I just had to, divide that revenue figure by 120. That's what everyone pays. I think you can do a similar thing. That was for a small business, but I think you can do a similar thing for a larger business. The costs are different, but you can still get the headline number and the bottom number and what the service is in between. Where you can get cheeky with that, I told my clients what number they were. So that's how I explained the fee concept. My number 3 client at his review would always say, now remember, we were number 3. I'm like, okay, that's cool. You can remember that. So I would tell them, I can only have 120 clients. You're number 73. Once I get to 120, I'm closing the doors. But I'd love your help to find really cool people that can be part of that 120. And that's where I still see practices struggling with referrals as well. It's like they're going to get a punch in the mouth if they ask. And it's like, no, they don't. And if you can give them a compliment in doing it and saying, Fraser, I love working with people like you. It's great. One thing I learned from another business, it wasn't me, but I implemented at Workwell, that using psychology, I'd say, Fraser, I'd love you to refer to the business, but I can only take 2 clients from you a year. I can't take any more. I will blow up. So it's only 2. And that got instilled in my client base because we know hundreds of people. So if I said to you, Fraser, I'm open for referrals, it's almost too hard. Some might gravitate towards that, but I would educate my clients on the type of referral. It was on my agenda, type of referral and how to refer. So if I said you've got two, I'd give my clients movie tickets when they referred. I'd have the cheeky client ring up going, Rob, there's a new movie coming out. I've already referred you to, but I've found another one. Is it okay that I send them through? And I'm going, Jeff, because it's you, sure, I'll look after them. So it was a bit of fun. Like it wasn't too serious.
Yeah, it's funny. It's really interesting, isn't it? The human psychology when you put some parameters around it.
Yeah, I mean, I used to tell clients because we'd obviously track referrals, and referrals is on the agenda. So if a client didn't refer over the 12 months, I'd say, hey, referrals, we talked about, who we're after, how to refer. We noticed you haven't referred. Just want to check in that you're happy. Like, are you okay? Like, is there, and sometimes I don't want to make them feel guilty, but they're like, oh shit, okay, we didn't refer. So, they go out of the office, but it was a good check-in to go, we haven't seen anyone from you. Are you okay? Are you enjoying, what we're doing? And we would ask for referrals. I know, I was talking to one of my practices recently who wants clients to be on 3 years before they ask for referral. And I'm like, surely you've got to do that as soon as you've implemented the plan, because they've just had a life-changing experience. They're going, I'm organized, I'm saving money, I'm investing properly. Like that's the time that they're going to go and tell their mates, I think.
It's definitely the time. It's the time that a lot of other businesses work on that same concept too. When somebody's purchased something or they've spent a lot of money, they want to tell everybody, they want to justify their purchase, and it's a good opportunity for them to talk about you. I really love the idea of the number 2, your number 3 client or number 73 client, whatever it might be. I think it's sort of like what the Australian cricket team and stuff does too, doesn't it? Like they're number such and such of the cricket team.
Yeah. Agree.
Giving people anything like that. I remember my old RACQ card. I'm showing my state here. Would say members since on it as well, like it'd been like members since this time, and you're like, I can't let that go now. I've got to keep going because I've been a member for this long.
Yeah, and it's funny where the other thing that often gets said, you don't want people to become numbers, but I would literally give them a number. I wouldn't then ring up and say, oh, hello, client 73, how are you? But it was good. They bought into that. Like I think clients care. I play golf every Wednesday. There was something I put in before I got my first client, and I'd explain that to clients, and they care about your financial well-being. Like so, they want you to have a life. So that's an important thing, and be human. I think back to one thing I was going to say. Around pricing, and I still see even within our practices lots of challenges around pricing that seem to be a constant change of repricing as legislation changes. And it's I look back to when I was a planner, and what a planner has to do now is just intense, and a lot of it the client doesn't want, it doesn't add value, but they still need to do it, and kind of as they have to do more, they need to reprice. But it's interesting with the value of advice. We've got some practices, when you're looking at your business, and you might say, oh, well, I'm going to drop the bottom 20% of my business so that I can then focus on, building up the target market or the top 20. We're finding a lot of practice that are doing that. And they might say, oh, look, you're paying $1,500 a year. Our minimum's $3,000. Sorry, we can't look after you anymore. And a lot of these clients, and I say a lot, 80% of them are saying, no, we want to stay. We're happy to pay. And so it stuffs their model out, their transition of where they want to get to, because they thought all these people would fall off and they'd be able to, grow the other end. So it gives them another challenge. But I think, what that demonstrates is that people that have been able to partake in financial planning and seen that, wow, I've mapped out where I want to be, and someone's looking after where I'm up to, and they're looking at legislation, they're looking at investment markets and what's changing, they're checking in with me on my estate planning. They don't want to then lose that. So they're used to it to then have to look after that. And that's why I used to say with my fees, if you want to stop paying me fees, you can have your file back. You can have your super, you can have your investment, you can look after your estate plan, you can look after all your insurances, you can make sure that you're on track with your financial. And they're like, oh shit, I don't want to have to do all of that. But it's the people, I guess, that haven't experienced financial planning, that look at maybe a fee and go, oh, I don't know that I want to pay that, but they haven't had the experience.
It's probably easier too when you are thinking about, repricing or putting your fees up, to be able to say to your existing clients, look, this is our new fee structure, because they're already there. It's easier probably winning their hearts and minds and winning the hearts and minds of new people.
Yeah, agree. Thoroughly agree. But if you're clear, and that's where I think, sometimes, even looking at risk at the moment and the problem with, some of our practices that might be very reliant on revenue from risk, I think there's the challenge too around the value, even in our own mindset, because it's funny, even some of our practice putting up fees, the clients are fine. They're like, yeah, that's fine, but it's more in our own minds. And I think when you look at, doing insurance, I was talking to one of our advisors the other day, and it's like, personal insurance is not like getting a house and contents policy online or a car insurance policy. And I think, being able to frame up that to get that right insurance, I need to look at everything about where you are, like where you're going to go, all your, financials, your salaries, your health, your family, your estate planning. I'm going to take all of that and then kind of work out the strategy of what would be optimal and look at I'm going to compare a couple of strategies. Then once I've done that, I'm going to go out to the market and find the products that I think are going to be really suitable for that strategy. And I'm going to charge you $5,000. Like this is not, if you want to go online and buy car insurance, go for it. But this is not something to muck around with, because if you die or if you have a traumatic event or you can't work anymore, that's pretty serious. So, and I think when you put it like that, you're like, okay, yeah, well, there's value in there, but maybe we don't articulate it well enough, or don't believe in the value enough that we transfer to clients.
It's a big chore for a lot of people to think about or read or understand their policy documents, isn't it, when it comes to any type of insurance? And even when I talk to planners about other types of insurance, people don't necessarily read their other types of insurance, PDSs or policies. It's just they know the insurance ones, the risk ones, because they're trying to talk to clients about them, but it affects their clients, so they read it. But we struggle to read our own, so it's always great to have somebody in your corner doing that.
Agree.
Now, tell me a bit more about your practice engagement role there. How does that work? Are you sort of working with practices to grow themselves, or how does that work?
Yeah, absolutely. So, and I think I alluded to, we're trying to do things a little bit differently and get smart with how we still, and that's evolving, and that's part of what I like at Fortnum, as far as it's a bit of a blank page as far as how we can help. One thing that's gone really well and came about. We had a couple of what we call pods or pod groups, peer groups that met. We had two kind of that we were trialing before COVID hit, and they would meet 6 monthly, and it would essentially be a whole day. But when COVID hit, obviously things changed around a little bit. So, and community was a big thing, probably in most licensees. That's where I'm not going to, we've got a community, we've got a culture. So has every other licensee, I would think. The culture and the community inside of Fortnum suits me. And so a lot of practices really want to help each other. We're very fortunate that we've got on average, good-sized practices, successful practices, and they're open to share. So when COVID hit and we're looking at pod groups, what it enabled me to do was get rid of geographical boundaries and to link like-minded practices. So if I've got practices that have got JVs with accountants, I can get 6 of those together because they're often, tackling the same issues. Or if I've got businesses that are younger and growing rapidly, I can put them together. If I've got businesses that have got 4 planners in there, bigger corporates, they might tackle things differently as well. So I've kind of, and I didn't get that perfect when we rolled it out. I've actually had my first pod reshuffle because, and you would know that there's different business models in this industry, and you can have practices that have 70 clients and go deep, and they might charge 15 to 20 grand a client, and they go deep. They might meet them quarterly. They love the investment side. That was never me personally. I admire those businesses, and they go hard on that kind of deep client connection. And then you've got the other businesses, which was my old business, that you do an investment review halfway through the year and you do an annual review, and you have more volume of clients and a lower price point. So we've got both of those kinds of firms. And it was funny, I mixed up one of my pods where I had a guy that was on average charging $3,000 a year, and one planner sitting there going, I charge 20 grand a year, and he was regional, and he's gone, give me a bit of that. Like, how do I do that? But it's a totally different business. So, but these pod groups, we kicked them off. We've got 15 of them, with 5 to 6 planners each in them, and it's phenomenal, Fraser. And I had one planner that's been a planner for 20 years, and his first pod, and he rang and he said, Rob, that's been the best 2 hours I've spent in my entire career. And I'm like, wow, that is terrific. Successful guy, runs a very good big business. So these pods, then I said, let's meet quarterly. Half of them said, no, we want to meet more regularly. We want to get on with it. I've got one, they call themselves a super pod. One pod meets monthly. And what a lot of them do is we tackle a concept. So we might do client experience. So we might do upfront client experience. So take me through when the phone rings and a client says, hello, I'd like to make an appointment. Take me right through to implementation. So we'd go practice by practice around there, as much as I've got, they're sharing their processes, their documents, they're emailing them after a pod going, here you go, here's everything I've discussed. It's just so open because there's no threat, if you like, for each other. Or we'll go through, what does the review process look like? Or we'll talk about marketing, or we'll talk about technology. We can bring, gurus within the Fortnum team. So I had Neil actually turned up to a couple, which was really good. We'll have a head of advice pop in for the first 15 minutes and just check that everyone's got their head around, enhanced FDS and OSAs or whatever. So it's brilliant, and they look forward to that, 2 hours with their peers. Stuff happens, outside of that as well, which is fine. Some pods are just happy. They just want to talk. They just want to turn up. We still fill in 2 hours with a general kind of around the grounds and seeing, what's important or what's going on for people, good or bad. But that's been a terrific thing. And for Fortnum, it's a great way for me to see 6 practices, all in one go. So where I can't obviously travel, there's the one-on-one experience as well, but the pods is really good. They're getting value off each other. And at some stage, I might mix them up again. Maybe in a couple of years, once they've exhausted, sucked everything out of their existing pod, we might mix it up again and go again with, different people. We've still got practices joining. So, we're putting together new pods now once we get to, 5 or 6 practice principles. We're doing it at the moment. I'd love to, although we need the resource to do it. I'd love to do one for, a couple for practice managers, for paraplanners. Would be good as well to kind of roll that out. But that's one positive, I guess, through COVID, that we've been able to do that, and advisors are not having to travel or, come together, and we can kind of mix and match the right kind of people.
Yeah, it's really interesting. It fascinates me, the idea of community and how this all works, and the size of the community. Everybody at a pod level of 6, everybody gets a say. Everybody has a decent amount of time. Everybody gets to know each other on a personal level, and they're not just their knowledge of their business, but their what they're like as a person, their attributes, their language, all those types of things. So I think it's incredible. And then when you do mix those pods up, they get, like you said, they get something new out of them. But the friendships and the pod doesn't stop when you mix them up. If somebody's still got an idea, or they can jump on the phone and they've developed some great relationships with their existing pod, so they can still utilize that when they need to.
Yeah, agree. And I think, the other thing is, like, Fortnum's grown fairly rapidly over the last, I guess, 2 years now. So, a couple of years ago, they would have been 95 advisors. They're now kind of 230. So a lot of these pods, they don't know each other. They've never met, and that's where one day we're meant to have our conference next month. That'll turn into a hybrid conference. I think Queensland's going to be the only state that's going to get a little bit of face to face, and maybe WA. But these people haven't met. They're actually yearning to meet and go, look, it's just not the same, virtually, but at some stage it'll be good to kind of connect them all up and let them shake hands and have a drink at some stage. So.
Yeah, exactly. Now, conferences, as you mentioned, in the last couple of years have had to change a lot, and the conferences that are still continuing this year are coming out in that hybrid state. Talk to me about how you see that developing over the next couple of years. You reckon we'll go straight back to the in-person conference, or will it still go the hybrid?
I don't know. I actually think ours was going to be a face-to-face conference this year in October, so next month. We did a ring around. We put our conference out, I don't know, it might have been June, and we needed to get the numbers up. So our head of learning and development and myself kind of got a list, and we thought, let's do a ring around. That was right when the New South Wales wave was starting to go up again. And a lot of them, we've got practices in regional Victoria. So they're going, well, I've got to get to the airport, somehow park my car, get on flights, do accommodation. We do have a fee for the conference. And so when they worked it all out, they're going, oh, look, I'm going to spend $2 or $3 doing this, and I'm going to have time out of the office and all that kind of stuff. As it's played out, we're going to have it in Sydney. We can't have it in Sydney anyway. And there was the nervousness of COVID. So it was a mix of COVID was probably the main one. They didn't want to get locked out of their state. They didn't want to come into New South Wales and not be able to get back. So I think that'll be different than next year. But the simplicity of being able to sit at your computer, not go anywhere, and I guess partake in a conference or a virtual event, and maybe it's a lot cheaper. It'll be interesting how that plays out. Like we're really keen to get people back face to face, and there'd be an element that are all of the advisors that are really keen as well. But those that might be a little bit more introverted and don't like those, because there was no other option before. You had to turn up to get that that training and that experience. But now we do have that option. So we're our conference. One of our kind of headline guys worked with Steve Jobs' team, and then was doing a lot of coaching for Google and ran Google's first hybrid event. He was encouraging Google to do their kind of internal conference hybrid. They took quite a time to get around to that. He used to have to fly to different areas for Google, but he ran their first hybrid conference, with 53,000 attendees. Anyway, so he's given us some really good tips for how to, and our Brisbane advisors are going to be very fortunate because he's going to turn up in person to Brisbane. And we're obviously beamed to different states, but it makes it more expensive, Fraser. That's the thing. Like, there's still a cost to running these, and virtual or a hybrid is a lot more expensive because you're not just sitting here on Zoom. You need all the recording equipment and stuff like that at the physical conference. So it does become a bit more of an expensive conference.
Yeah, it's interesting in the expense because the conferences, and I've talked about conference expense for many years in the way that when we used to go to the US conferences, they were a couple of $100 to go to, and you went along and you paid you a couple of $100, but you spent a lot of time giving of all of your information and knowledge and those sorts of things and your experiences, and you were receiving everybody else's back. There was a bit of energy and hype around giving as well as receiving, not just receiving. And sometimes when you paid a few $1,000s to go to a conference, you feel like you've already given and you're now waiting to receive. But yeah, there is a lot of expense in conferences, and there's a bit of a difference between a $200 online. Yeah, I'll get the content and the CPD online for a couple $100 versus spending $2 or $3 to get there and flights, accommodation, and rock up for a few days.
Yeah, and I think people are. I mean, there's a lot of stuff now around Zoom fatigue, and you can tell. I mean, I've got now into the habit of shutting everything else down when I've got a webinar because you can see people eyes wandering over to the second screen. We're very distracted in this environment as well. So that we're not learning as much as what we could if we were sitting in a conference room with our phone turned upside down. So I think we're a bit more distracted these days.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, you mentioned a couple of times sometimes with regards to the conference and the some of the pod stuff, the surveys and the ring arounds, that's exactly how you present or develop any content. You ring around and ask for feedback, and then start delivering what are the top issues and those sorts of things.
Yeah, I think so. That conference one was more. We were drumming up numbers, so trying to work out, why they haven't registered. So it wasn't kind of around the actual content for the conference itself. But we did do a survey. When was it? Maybe a year ago. Around, we kind of had 11 areas and trying to gauge the pain points for practices, and then we were looking at running a series off that to help practices. So, and this is actually an example of something that we tried, and it didn't probably work the way I would have liked to, but to have the freedom to explore, different opportunities. So our practice kind of said process and efficiency, / technology is the number one pain point, and that was a standout. So by far, so out of the respondents, I think at least 50% said that was number one out of 11, and then it kind of dropped down to be communicating value. Pricing was number 2, client experience number 3, and then business planning and performance management was number 4. So we looked at then, running what I called some boot camps around that, some kind of 90-day, exactly like a boot camp. Come in, we've got 90 days, you want to lose 7 kilos. So come in, you want to enhance your client experience, and then you've got a very measurable result. So here you were day 1, and day 91, this is where you were. We had mixed interest with that, and I reflected. So we're still looking at kicking off that in some way, but not like I thought. Like, we had 4 boot camps. We thought they'll all run at the same time with a view to building up this subject matter of boot camp, so that you can, like doing biceps for 90 days, now we're going to do legs. So, we could do that. But the interest wasn't as high as I thought. And then I've reflected, like, practices we're going to have to pay for that, Fraser. So Fortnum is very much a user pays model. So we charge a flat fee for our businesses, and then things like this, if they're really expensive, we need to say, well, how do we pay for this? And I think, like all things, if a practice pays or if a person pays, they're going to value it more as well than if it was a freebie. So we had a lot of our practices that are already going through coaching programs with a couple of businesses that we have relationships with anyway. So that kind of pushed them out because they weren't going to embark on something else. As you can appreciate, or as anyone probably who's in planning can appreciate at the moment, people are really busy. So, in this virtual environment, this would have all been via webinar, and I think there's probably an element of it that they go, wow, okay, another thing on my plate that I have to do. We talked earlier about the industries getting a lot of new clients in at the moment. A lot of our practices are really, really busy. And then looking at how they, one of my practices said, do we gear up assuming this busyness, or when I say busy, new clients coming in, new prospective clients, new business growing, do we assume that this is going to continue? At the moment, I think you have a lot of people navigating what COVID means, re-looking at life. Where do I live? Where's my money invested properly? What are my goals? Element of those fall out into seeking a financial planner, coupled with the fact that we've lost a third of our financial planners. So we're naturally going to be busy. So I think a lot of them are just trying to keep their head above water, service their existing clients, implement all this new legislation that's coming in, which we're often as a licensee, we're the ones passing that down through to them. But then, looking after these new clients, you don't want someone to have a really shitty experience as their first contact with you. So there's that pressure of, delivering advice in a timely fashion as well. So I think one thing we haven't touched on, I find fascinating from running a planning practice to then being in a licensee. It's really interesting. So being in the leadership team discussions and advice and where we're going, and then, planning practices. And there's still a little probably in the industry around, the licensee's doing this, or the licensees, or you're doing it for yourselves, you're not doing it for us. And I look at it, and certainly, at our licensee, and this is not an advertisement, but I openly. Like I have, some things work, some things don't work, but it's our aim to protect that license. So it's, as much as I've got a job at Fortnum, I need that license to stay intact. If it's not, I don't have a job, and I value my reputation too. So if Fortnum's reputation gets stuffed up, that's going to reflect that's on my resume. But then for our practices, they're operating under that same license. So everything that should be done at licensee level is to make life easier for that practice. And that's an ongoing challenge, Fraser. Like one thing we're finding is a bit of Fortnum's proposition, it still is, but it used to be very much, freedom within a framework. And that appealed to a lot of practices, going, great, we can have our own unique way as long as we stay within those lines. We're agnostic to product platforms, all that kind of stuff. What we found in probably the last 6 months, and with all this change coming down, more practices are going, hey, we need a bit more framework. Like we're happy to give up a little bit of our uniqueness to get more guidance and more. Some of the projects we're working on internally now, looking at kind of recommended practice and workflows and things. So they're like, we don't want to miss something. We enjoy the freedom, but now we're happy to give up some freedom to make sure we don't get it wrong, which feels like a change, like only in the last kind of 6 months.
I can definitely see or feel that change as well. There's definitely that because of all of the speed of the change, but also that little bit of fear, maybe a little bit of worry about, and just give us those more narrow guardrails and. Give us, I guess you mentioned it when you talked about the boot camps. The number one reason was around that, people that after process, or just show us how to do it in a way that's nice and compliant and simple, and we'll just adopt that rather than try and reinvent the wheel.
Yeah. No, agree. So that's something that'll just continue to evolve, I think.
Yeah, fantastic. I think that's probably not just your licensee. I think that's probably across the board.
Yeah, great.
Hey, Rob, thanks for catching up today. Really appreciate you giving up your time and having a chat to us and sharing all of your wealth of knowledge. I really appreciate it. I've just realised we've been talking for nearly an hour, so we probably should leave it there. Thank you so much. If somebody wants to get hold of you and continue the conversation, probably what's the best way they can find you?
I reckon they'd find me on LinkedIn. It's probably the easiest way, I think. That'd be the easiest way if they want to reach out for anything. Happy to help.
Fantastic. Really appreciate it. Thank you, Rob.
You're a legend. Thank you.